I'm sitting in a lawyer's office that smells like old books and lemon polish, and my brother Marcus just asked a question that made my blood run cold. The lawyer hasn't even finished reading our parents' will, his voice still droning through the legal language about property and assets, when Marcus leans forward in his chair and says, "Before we continue, I'd like to know about any changes made to this document in the last few years. Specifically, changes made while certain people had more access than others." He doesn't look at me when he says it. He's staring straight ahead at David Klein, the family lawyer, but I feel the accusation like a slap across my face. Rachel shifts in her seat next to me, and I wait for her to say something, to defend me, to ask what the hell Marcus is implying. But she stays silent, examining her fingernails like they're the most fascinating things in the world. "Marcus." I start, but my voice comes out thin and uncertain. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about transparency, Elena." Now he does look at me, and his expression is perfectly reasonable, perfectly concerned. That's what makes it so terrifying. You were there every day. You handled their medications, their bills, their phone calls. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I just want to make sure everything was above board. The lawyer clears his throat uncomfortably. "Mr. Ward, I can assure you that your parents were of sound mind when they made their decisions. All proper protocols were followed." "That's not what I asked," Marcus says smoothly. I want to scream. I want to stand up and walk out. But I've spent the last 9 years keeping the peace, smoothing over conflicts, making sure everyone was comfortable, and old habits die hard. So instead I sit there, my hands clenched so tight in my lap that my nails are digging crescents into my palms, and I say nothing. This is not how I imagined today going. 2 weeks ago, I buried my father next to my mother in a cemetery on the edge of town. 2 weeks ago, I stood in the rain and wondered if the weight pressing down on my chest would ever lift. I'd spent nearly a decade caring for them both, watching my mother's slow decline from multiple sclerosis, then my father's gradual surrender to heart disease and diabetes. I'd given up job opportunities, relationships, any semblance of a normal life in my 30s. I'd done it willingly, mostly. I'd done it because they needed me and because no one else was going to. But apparently, that makes me a suspect. The reading continues, but I barely hear it. Something about the house going to me, which makes sense since I've been living there, taking care of it. Some accounts split 3 ways between us siblings. Dad's old truck going to Marcus, which is almost funny since Marcus hasn't visited in 3 years. When we finally leave the office, I'm numb. I walk toward my car, my mother's old sedan that I've been driving since she couldn't anymore, and Marcus catches up to me in the parking lot. "Elena, wait." I stop but don't turn around. Behind me, I hear his footsteps on the gravel. "Look, I'm sorry if that came across wrong in there," he says, and he sounds genuinely apologetic. This is the Marcus I remember from childhood, the big brother who used to help me with homework and scare away boys who were mean to me. "I'm not trying to attack you, but you have to understand how this looks from the outside. You were around them the most. That gives you influence whether you intended it or not." I finally turn to face him. He's wearing an expensive suit, the kind of thing he wears to board meetings at his tech company in Seattle. His hair is graying at the temples in that distinguished way that men get away with. He looks successful and composed, and nothing like the person who used to build blanket forts with me in the living room. "Influence," I repeat. "Is that what you're calling it?" "I'm calling it reality. I'm just saying that Mom and Dad relied on you heavily. That creates a dynamic. And in that dynamic, things can happen. Decisions can be made that benefit one person more than others." I wiped Mom's tears when she couldn't stop crying from the pain, I say, and my voice is shaking now. I helped Dad to the bathroom at 3 in the morning when he was too proud to wear adult diapers. I gave them their medications, made their meals, drove them to every single doctor's appointment. That's the influence you're talking about. That's the dynamic. "I know you did all that." He holds up his hands like he's placating a wild animal. "And we're grateful."
I'm grateful.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't ask questions.
We.
I look past him and see Rachel standing by her rental car, far enough away that she can pretend she's not listening. "Rachel, do you have questions too?" She looks up, startled to be called out. For a second, I think she might actually walk over, might actually say something. But she just gives me this pained, apologetic smile and calls out, "Let's not make this a fight, okay? We're all grieving." And then she gets in her car and drives away. I should have known then. I should have seen what was coming. But I was too tired, too raw, too caught up in the fresh grief of losing my father just 6 months after losing my mother. So I got in my car and drove back to the house that apparently now belongs to me, the house that still smells like my father's aftershave and my mother's lavender soap, and I tried to pretend that everything was fine. It wasn't fine. Over the next few days, Marcus starts calling family members. I know this because my Aunt Carol calls me, her voice careful and probing, asking how I'm holding up and whether there's anything I want to talk about. Then my cousin Derek sends me a weird text asking if it's true that I'd been handling all the finances for the last few years. My Uncle Paul doesn't call at all, which is somehow worse. I realize Marcus is building a narrative. He's not coming at me directly anymore. He's being subtle, planting seeds of doubt, framing his concern as love. To everyone else, he probably sounds like a devoted son trying to make sense of his parents' final wishes, trying to ensure his vulnerable sister didn't inadvertently take advantage of 2 sick, elderly people. The thing about memory is that it's malleable. Once someone suggests an alternative interpretation, it's hard to unsee it. I start thinking about all those moments Marcus is probably bringing up to our relatives. The time I convinced Mom to try a new medication her doctor recommended, and she initially resisted. Was I being controlling? The time I handled Dad's finances when he was too weak to focus on bills. Was I overstepping? The countless conversations I had with them about their wishes, their fears, their hopes for what would happen after they were gone. Was I manipulating? I find myself lying awake at night, replaying scenes from the past decade like I'm reviewing evidence at a trial. There's me, helping Mom into the shower, my hands gentle but firm because she needed support but hated feeling helpless. There's me, arguing with Dad about whether he should stop driving, a fight that ended with both of us in tears because we both knew I was right but he felt like I was taking away the last piece of his independence. There's me, sitting with them during those quiet evenings just being present because sometimes presence was all I could offer and it seemed like enough. But through Marcus's lens, all of it looks different. Helping becomes controlling. Presence becomes hovering. Love becomes leverage. If you've ever been close to someone who cared more about being right than being fair, you know what I'm talking about. If silence from the people who should defend you has ever hurt more than the accusations themselves, leave a comment. Because that's where I am right now, and I've never felt more alone. 3 weeks after the will reading, Marcus suggests we meet. Just the 3 of us siblings, he says. No lawyers, no relatives. Just family trying to work things out. Rachel agrees immediately. Sending a text with multiple heart emojis like that somehow makes up for the fact that she hasn't actually spoken to me since the parking lot. I agree because what else can I do? Refuse and look like I have something to hide? We meet at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. It's a weekday afternoon, and the place is mostly empty except for a few people working on laptops. Marcus orders a black coffee. Rachel gets some complicated latte. I order tea I won't drink, and sit down across from them. I've been thinking a lot about the past few years, Marcus begins, and I notice he's brought a notebook. He's actually brought notes to this conversation like it's a business meeting. And I keep coming back to specific moments that concern me. Like when Mom changed her primary care physician. You were the one who pushed for that, right? Her old doctor was dismissive about her pain management. I say. The new one actually listened to her. But you made the decision. I suggested it. She agreed. After you convinced her. This is how it goes. He brings up incident after incident, innocent moments from years of caregiving, and reframes them as evidence of undue influence. The time I took over managing their medications because Dad kept forgetting his blood pressure pills. The time I suggested they put my name on their bank account so I could help with bills. The time I drove them to update their will because they'd been talking about it for months and kept putting it off. Where are you going with this, Marcus? I finally ask. He closes his notebook and looks at me with what I swear is pity. I think you meant well, Elena. I really do. But I think you were in over your head, and I think mom and dad became dependent on you in a way that wasn't healthy. And I think that dependency influenced their decision-making. Their decision-making. I repeat slowly. You mean their decision to leave me the house where I've been living and taking care of them? I mean their decision to leave you the house and the majority of the liquid assets and dad's life insurance beneficiary designation. My stomach drops. What are you talking about? The accounts were split 3 ways.
Some of them.
But there's a life insurance policy with a $200,000 payout that names only you.
Did you know about that?
I didn't. I genuinely had no idea. My father had mentioned life insurance once or twice, but he never told me details, and I never asked because asking felt greedy, felt like I was waiting for him to die. Now my ignorance makes me look either incredibly naive or incredibly guilty. I didn't know, I whisper. Convenient, Marcus says, and there it is. The accusation he's been dancing around, now stated plainly. Rachel finally speaks up. Marcus, come on. That's a bit much. Is it? Think about it, Rachel. Elena's been isolated with them for years. She controlled their information, their access to us. When was the last time either of us had a real conversation with mom or dad without Elena being in the room or on the phone line? Because I was caring for them, I say, but my voice sounds defensive even to my own ears. Because you weren't there. I was working. I was building a career, so I could support my own family. And I was giving them showers and changing their sheets and holding their hands when they were scared. But sure, your career was more important. The moment I say it, I know I've made a mistake. His face hardens. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This attitude. This martyrdom. Like you're the only one who sacrificed anything, the only one who loved them. I never said that. You didn't have to. It's been implicit in every conversation we've had for the last decade. Poor Elena, stuck at home with the parents while the rest of us live our lives. Well, maybe you wanted to be stuck there. Maybe it gave you exactly what you were looking for. I stand up so fast my chair scrapes against the floor. People look over at us. I'm done with this conversation. We're not done, Marcus says calmly. I'm requesting a formal mediation. I think we need a third party to review the circumstances around the will and that life insurance policy. You're really doing this. I'm protecting our parents' legacy. If you have nothing to hide, you should welcome the scrutiny. I look at Rachel, waiting for her to say something, to object, to tell Marcus he's being ridiculous. She meets my eyes for just a second, then looks down at her latte. Fine, I say. Mediate. Investigate. Do whatever you need to do. I walk out of the coffee shop and sit in my car and realize I'm shaking. Not from anger, though there's plenty of that.
From fear.
Because Marcus is right about one thing. From the outside, it just looked bad. I was there every day. I did have influence. And now I'm the primary beneficiary of decisions my parents made when they were sick and vulnerable and dependent on me. Even if I did nothing wrong, how do I prove it? How do you prove a negative? How do you prove that every conversation, every suggestion, every moment of care was motivated by love and not by greed? You can't. You can only point to your actions and hope people interpret them charitably. And right now, Marcus is making sure no one interprets anything about me charitably. That night, I do something I've been avoiding. I go through my father's things, really go through them, looking for anything that might explain his decisions. He was a man who wrote things down, always had been. Little notes to himself, reminders, thoughts. Mom used to tease him about his notebooks. I find one in his bedside drawer, a leather-bound journal I've never seen before. My hands are shaking as I open it. The entries are sporadic, dated over the last 3 years. Most of it is mundane, doctor's appointments, medication schedules, things he wanted to remember. But then I find an entry from 8 months ago, and I have to sit down on the bed to read it. Elena came by today after work. It says in my father's careful handwriting. She brought groceries, and that soup Helen likes. She didn't mention that it was her birthday. I only remembered because Helen reminded me after she left. Marcus called this week. Talked for 10 minutes, mostly about his company's new product launch. I'm proud of him, but I wish he'd ask how we're doing instead of just telling us how he's doing. Rachel sent a card. It's something. I'm crying before I finish the entry. I flip through more pages, finding similar observations. My father, documenting the reality of those years. Who showed up?
Who called?
Who remembered? Who stayed? There's an entry from 2 months before he died. Talked to David Klein today about the will. Elena doesn't know about the insurance policy. I haven't told her because I don't want her to feel like this is payment for her care. It's not. It's because she's lost the most time, the most opportunities. Marcus and Rachel have their lives. Elena gave up hers for us. This is the least I can do, though it doesn't feel like nearly enough. I'm reading this entry, tears streaming down my face, when I hear the front door open. I quickly close the notebook, my heart pounding. It's Marcus. Of course it's Marcus. He still has a key. Elena, he calls out. I shove the notebook back in the drawer and wipe my face. In here. He appears in the doorway of our parents' bedroom. His expression shifts when he sees me sitting on their bed, surrounded by boxes of their belongings. What are you doing? Going through their things. Is that allowed? Or is that manipulative too? He ignores the jab. I came to talk to you.
To apologize, actually. This surprises me.
Really? I was too harsh today. Rachel said so, and she's right.
You did sacrifice a lot.
I should have acknowledged that more clearly. It's an olive branch, and I should probably take it. But something about his tone feels off, feels rehearsed. Like he's saying what he thinks he should say, not what he feels. Okay, I say carefully. Thank you. But Elena, the concern remains. Not about your intentions, but about the influence. Surely you can see how it looks. And there it is. The apology was just a setup for another accusation. Get out, I say quietly. What? Get out of this house. Get out of their bedroom. Get out of my space. It's not just your space. Not yet. Not until we
Get out.
He leaves, but I know this isn't over. This is just beginning. The next few weeks are a special kind of hell. Marcus hires a lawyer. Not for a lawsuit, he clarifies in an email to Rachel and me, but for consultation on estate planning concerns. Rachel continues her strategy of aggressive neutrality, responding to both of us in group texts with platitudes about family and love and working together. Extended family members start distancing themselves. Aunt Carol stops calling. Cousin Derek unfriends me on social media, which would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Uncle Paul sends me a text that says, I think it's best if we give each other space right now. As if I'm the one who did something wrong. At night, I lie in my childhood bedroom. I can't bring myself to sleep in my parents' room yet and wonder if I actually did something wrong. Not legally, maybe, but morally. Did I let them become too dependent on me? Did I encourage that dependency because it made me feel needed? Was there a part of me that liked being indispensable, that liked being the good daughter, while Marcus and Rachel live their lives? The self-doubt is poison. It seeps into everything. I start questioning every memory, every motive. Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I couldn't see how controlling I was being because I was too close to it, too caught up in the daily grind of caregiving to notice I was overstepping. But then I remember my mother's hand in mine during those last weeks, the way she'd squeeze my fingers and whisper, "What would I do without you?" I remember my father's smile when I'd walk into his room in the morning, the way his whole face would light up like I'd given him a gift just by showing up. Were those moments real? Or am I romanticizing them now to justify my choices? If you've ever questioned yourself so deeply that you couldn't trust your own memories, your own reality, you'll understand what I'm going through. And if this story feels uncomfortably familiar, I want you to know you're not alone. None of us are, even when it feels like we are. The mediation happens 6 weeks after the initial will reading. We sit in another generic office with another neutral professional, this time a mediator named Sandra Chen who has a calm voice and kind eyes that don't take sides. Marcus presents his concerns with PowerPoint slides. He's actually made a presentation about our parents' decline and my increasing involvement in their care, complete with a timeline and bullet points. It's grotesque and thorough. He talks about undue influence and cognitive vulnerability and isolation tactics. He brings up the fact that I discouraged Dad from using email because he kept falling for phishing scams. He mentions that I screened some of Mom's phone calls because solicitors kept upsetting her. He notes that I was present at every doctor's appointment and asks how we can be sure I didn't influence the information the doctors received. Rachel sits next to him, not quite endorsing his presentation but not opposing it either. Her presence is its own betrayal. When it's my turn to speak, I don't have slides. I just have my truth, which suddenly feels inadequate. I did what needed to be done, I say. I protected them when they needed protection. I advocated for them when they couldn't advocate for themselves. I was there because no one else was. And yes, that gave me influence. But it was the influence of proximity, of showing up, of doing the work that no one else wanted to do. No one's questioning your effort, Marcus says smoothly. We're questioning whether that effort came with strings attached. The only strings attached were the ones that kept Mom and Dad alive and comfortable for as long as possible. Sandra Chin intervenes. Let's focus on facts. Elena, were you aware of the life insurance designation?
No.
Did your parents discuss their estate planning with you?
Sometimes.
They'd mention wanting to make sure I was taken care of because I'd put my life on hold. But they never told me specifics. Did you ever suggest how they should distribute their assets?
No.
I told them I didn't want to know. I told them to do whatever felt right to them. Marcus leans forward. But you must have had conversations about what would happen after they died. About who would get the house, about finances.
Of course I did.
I was helping them plan for end-of-life care. That includes practical considerations. And in those practical considerations, did you mention that you'd been living in the house? I mentioned that I'd need time to figure out my next steps, yes. Because I'd given up my apartment to move in with them. Because I had no career to return to and no savings because I'd been living on their limited income. Those are facts, Marcus. Not manipulation. Just facts. He sits back, and I can see him calculating. He's not going to back down. This isn't about the money or the house. This is about his guilt, his need to rewrite history so he's not the absent son who abandoned his dying parents. If he can make me the villain, he gets to be the victim. The mediation ends with no resolution. Sandra Chen suggests we all take time to cool off and reconvene. As we're leaving, Rachel finally pulls me aside in the hallway. I'm sorry, she whispers. This got out of hand. You could stop it, I say. You could tell him he's wrong. I don't know that he's wrong, though. I don't know what happened in that house, Elena. I wasn't there. Exactly. You weren't there. So, maybe you should trust the person who was. She looks like she wants to say more, but Marcus appears, and she goes to him instead. That's when I understand that Rachel hasn't been neutral. She's been with him all along, just too cowardly to admit it openly. Her silence was always a choice, and she chose him. I drive home alone and sit in the driveway for 20 minutes before I can make myself go inside. The house feels different now, tainted by accusation. Every corner holds a memory that's been reframed as evidence. The kitchen where I made the meals. The bathroom where I helped them bathe. The living room where we watched TV together in the evenings. All of it now suspicious. All of it now part of Marcus's narrative of manipulation. That night, I finally let myself fall apart. I ugly cry on the couch where my mother used to sit, and I scream into a pillow because screaming into the void doesn't feel like enough. I'm angry and hurt and so tired of defending myself, of justifying my love, of proving that I'm not the monster my brother is painting me as. And then I remember the notebook. My father's notebook with his observations, his gratitude, his clear articulation of why he made the choices he made. It's proof. It's vindication. It's everything I need to shut Marcus down and end this nightmare. I could send it to Sandra Chen. I could CC the whole family. I could post excerpts on social media and let everyone see the truth. My father's own words, explaining that his decisions were his own, made with full awareness and no manipulation. But as I sit there with the notebook in my hands, I realize something that makes me sick. If I share this, I'm using my father's private thoughts as a weapon. I'm turning his journal, something personal and intimate, into evidence in a family war he never wanted. He wrote these entries for himself, maybe for me to find someday, but not like this. Not as ammunition. And more than that, if I use this notebook to prove my innocence, I'm accepting the premise that I need to prove it. I'm validating Marcus's right to put me on trial for the crime of caregiving. I'm playing a game where even winning means I lose something fundamental. I think about what my father would want. He'd want his children to love each other. He'd want peace, not vindication. He'd hate knowing his journal became a courtroom exhibit. But I also think about justice, about truth, about the fact that Marcus is rewriting history and everyone is letting him do it, about the younger siblings out there, the caregivers who sacrifice everything, who might hear this story and think twice before stepping up because what if? So here's where I am. I have proof, but using it feels like a betrayal of its own kind. I could end this today, but the cost would be something I'm not sure I can afford to pay. If you were in my position, what would you do? Comment below, because I genuinely don't know the right answer here. 2 days later, something happens that changes everything. Mrs. Alvarez, our neighbor who's lived next door for 30 years, calls me. She's seen the family tension. Apparently Marcus has been making calls from his rental car in our driveway, and in a small town, people notice things. I need to tell you something, she says. I should have said it sooner, but I didn't want to interfere. She comes over with a box of letters. Letters from my parents to her, written over the years. They used to bring her soup when she was sick, and she'd return the favor. Sometimes they'd sit on her porch and talk. And apparently they talked about us kids. Your mother wrote me this about 6 months before she died, Mrs. Alvarez says, handing me an envelope. She asked me to keep it safe. She said she hoped she'd never need me to share it, but if there was ever conflict after they were gone, I should give it to you. My hands shake as I open it. My mother's handwriting is shaky but legible. Dear Elena, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Your brother has probably raised questions about your role in our care. I want you to know that every decision your father and I made was our own. We were grateful for your presence, not controlled by it. We chose to leave you the house because you lived there, sacrificed for it, made it your home while caring for us. We chose the insurance beneficiary because you lost income, opportunities, years of your life. Not because you manipulated us, but because we wanted to acknowledge what you gave up. You deserved a life of your own, and we took that from you, however willingly you gave it. The money doesn't come close to repaying what you lost, but it's all we had to give. Marcus struggles with guilt. He always has. He needs to believe he did enough, and if he can't believe that, he needs to believe someone else did too much. Don't let his guilt become your shame. You have nothing to apologize for. Love, Mom. I'm sobbing before I finish. Mrs. Alvarez puts her arms around me, and I cry into her shoulder like a child. There's more, she says gently. Your father came to me about a month before he died. He told me Marcus had been making comments, asking questions about you and your influence. Your father knew what might happen. He wanted me to be a witness if needed. He wanted me to tell anyone who'd listen that you were the best thing that happened to them in those hard years. Why didn't you say anything earlier? Because I hoped I wouldn't have to. I hoped your siblings would remember who you are, what you did. But I've been watching this unfold, and I can't stay silent anymore. She testifies at the next mediation. She brings the letters, her own observations from years of living next door, her account of conversations with my parents. She's calm and credible and impossible to dismiss. Marcus tries. He suggests she's been influenced by me, that she's partial because we're neighbors. But Sandra Chun is a professional, and she can tell the difference between someone with an agenda and someone telling the truth. Mr. Ward, Sandra says carefully, it seems like multiple independent sources confirm that your parents were capable of making their own decisions and that Elena's role was appropriate. But she still benefited disproportionately. She also contributed disproportionately. That's not manipulation. That's consequence. The mediation ends with Marcus withdrawing his concerns, though he frames it as agreeing to disagree for the sake of family unity. Rachel apologizes to me afterward, a real apology this time, with tears and admissions of cowardice. But it's too late. The damage is done. I forgive her, Because holding grudges takes energy I don't have, but I don't forget. I can't. She showed me who she is when things get hard, and I believe her. Marcus leaves town without speaking to me. He sends a formal email through his lawyer, releasing any claims on the estate. It's cold and legal, and exactly what I expected. We don't talk for months. When we finally do speak again, it's because Aunt Carol has a heart attack and someone needs to coordinate. We're stiffly polite. We avoid the past. We focus on logistics. It's a relationship, technically, but it's a shell of what it was. Maybe it always was a shell, and I just couldn't see it until the stress cracked it open. Rachel, and I rebuild something. It's tentative and careful, but it's real. She comes to visit every few months. We talk about surface things mostly, but sometimes late at night over wine, we talk about the hard stuff too. About how she wished she'd been braver. About how I wished I'd been less naive about family loyalty. I keep the house. I turn my parents' bedroom into a home office and slowly make the space my own. I get a part-time job, then a full-time one. I start rebuilding a life that's mine, not defined by caregiving or conflict. But here's the truth nobody tells you about betrayal. Even when you're vindicated, even when you're proven right, the scars remain. I still second-guess myself. When I help someone, I wonder if I'm being controlling. When I stand up for myself, I wonder if I'm being defensive. Marcus's accusations planted seeds of doubt that grew roots, and pulling them out has been harder than fighting him ever was. I also learned something important. Sacrifice without witnesses is still sacrifice. The truth exists whether anyone acknowledges it or not. My worth doesn't depend on my brother's approval or my sister's testimony or a neighbor's letters. I know what I did. I know why I did it. That has to be enough. Some nights I sit in the living room, in the same spot where I used to sit with my parents, and I feel them there. Not in a ghostly way, but in the memories soaked into the furniture, the walls, the air. I remember my mother's laugh, my father's terrible jokes, the comfortable silence of people who loved each other. Those memories are mine, untainted by accusation, and no one can take them from me. Did I do everything perfectly?
No.
I was impatient sometimes. I made decisions that frustrated them. I probably did hover more than I needed to, cross lines I shouldn't have crossed. But I did it from love, and I'd do it again. The money from the life insurance sits in an account I haven't touched. Part of me still feels guilty about it, still hears Marcus's voice asking if I knew about it, implying I engineered it. But I'm working on that. I'm working on accepting that my parents' gift doesn't have to be payment or manipulation or guilt. It can just be what they said it was, an acknowledgement, a thank you, a way of saying that my sacrifice mattered. Would I recommend caregiving to someone else? I honestly don't know. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, and the aftermath was almost harder. But it's also the most meaningful. I got time with my parents that my siblings didn't get. I knew them in ways they never will. I was there for the mundane moments, the scared moments, the grateful moments, the angry moments. I saw their whole humanity, not just the version they presented to weekend visitors. And in the end, they saw mine too. That's worth something. Maybe it's worth everything. If you're caring for someone right now, if you're sacrificing your present for someone else's comfort, I see you. If you've been accused of having ulterior motives for your kindness, I see you. If your family has turned on you for doing what no one else would do, I see you. You're not alone. This story is for you. And if you're the sibling who left, who built a life somewhere else while someone stayed behind, I'm not here to judge you. But I am here to tell you, check your guilt before it becomes cruelty. Check your narrative before it becomes someone else's nightmare. The person who stayed isn't your villain. They're your proxy, living the life you didn't want so you didn't have to feel bad about wanting something different. It's been 2 years since my father died. The house is mine legally now, all paperwork finalized. The estate is settled. The family is fractured but functional. And I'm still here, still processing, still figuring out who I am when I'm not defined by caregiving or conflict. Some days I'm angry.
Some days I'm sad.
Some days I'm grateful for the lessons, even though I hate that I had to learn them this way. Most days, I'm just tired. But I'm healing. Slowly, messily, but genuinely. The notebook stays in my father's drawer. I haven't read it again since that first time. It's enough to know it's there, proof that I'm not crazy, that my version of events is real. I don't need to keep rereading it. I believe myself now. That's the real victory, I think. Not proving Marcus wrong, or winning some family tribunal. It's believing myself. It's trusting that my memories are valid, my motives were pure, my love was real. It's knowing that even if the whole world doubted me, I wouldn't doubt myself. I hope you find that kind of certainty too. I hope you find peace with your choices, whatever they were. And I hope you know that sometimes the people who should understand you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest, and that's not your fault. That's just the risk of loving people who can't see past their own pain. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've lived something similar, if you just need to feel less alone tonight, leave a comment. Tell your story. This is a space for truth, even when truth is messy and doesn't have a neat ending. And if you want more stories about family, about betrayal, about the complicated truth of caregiving and sacrifice, hit the subscribe button.